Good morning. It is good to gather this morning here in this wonderful church. I want to say a thank you to all who have had a hand in making today possible. I appreciate all the work that you have put in to have us all here today. I also want to say a word of thanks to my colleague, Pastor Dan Hart, who's the senior pastor at First United Methodist Church. He and I have been collaborating on this presentation this morning. So some of the stories that you hear and some of the words that I will say are his stories and his words, as he also lives into being a servant minister in our community, in making connections to alleviate the needs of the homeless in our community. So thank you. So I begin this morning, I bring $1 with me. A dollar bill that is not physically different than any other dollar bill. It's printed with the same ink and on the same piece of paper and signed by the Secretary of the Treasury. It is, for all intents and purposes, a normal, everyday dollar bill. But the value of this dollar bill is in how it came to us at First United Methodist Church of Mount Clemens. The relationship that is signified in this dollar bill is what gives it its worth and its value. Relationships, as Carl said, are key to building a ministry and mission in our community. If we want to be in the community engaging with missions, we have to form partnerships. We have to form relationships. There is no one church or business or school or nonprofit that can alleviate the needs of this world on their own. We simply aren't big enough. We don't have enough resources. And so the most important thing that we can do is build relationships. But relationships are not built overnight. They're not just a handshake and then we're off and running. Relationships take time, they take patience, they take trust. There are many groups in our communities that are wary of working with churches. Churches have agendas. Churches bring baggage, and that is difficult sometimes to start a conversation. Oftentimes I have to remind people that we are about sharing love in the world, and we are about making sure that people have what they need, and that is what is important. Relationships have to build trust, and we have to be intentional about that, because trust is the thing that will make or break a relationship and a mission. And trust is basically saying you're going to do something and you do it consistently all the time. It's treating people with respect and love all the time. It's being who you say you're going to be all the time. And that's difficult. Relationships start with a simple word: yes. It's saying yes to something. And that may be a simple thing to do, or it may be a very difficult thing to do. But saying yes starts the relationship. If you never say yes to something, you'll never move outside the four walls of your church. You have to say yes. But yes also means you know your congregation well enough to know they're going to come alongside you. If your congregation isn't ready to do what you're saying yes to, then that is going to be fraught with difficulty. So knowing who your congregation is key to forming those relationships out in the world. When you say yes, you have to be and show God's love all the time, because yes comes with responsibility and with expectations. We say yes a lot at First United Methodist Church. We say yes with bus tickets. This is a newer yes that we have said. We have bus tickets in our office. Anyone can come in off the street and get a bus ticket or two, no questions asked. They just have to say, do we want a bus ticket? And we say yes. We said yes to snack bags. Snack bags are a yes that started out one way and ended up a completely different thing. We started out saying yes to making snack bags for Cass because we could not participate in Hands with Detroit. And someone came to me and said, hey, why can't we do that for our church? And I said, No reason. So we said yes. And now you come, you get a bus ticket and a snack bag. And you can leave with a way to get somewhere and some food in your belly. That's every day at our congregation. We said yes to a blessings box. We have a blessings box on the outside of our building. It's filled with personal hygiene products, feminine hygiene products, and from time to time, the odd Bible that people put in and that takes away and it comes back. But that blessing box is open 24/7, no questions asked. Come and get what you need. And if you watch our security camera, there are people in and out of blessing box all day, every day, at all times of the day, which is really very cool. But we said yes to that. And we say yes to making sure that it's maintained, which takes effort and time. And takes effort to gather everything, but it's an important thing, and we said yes to that. One of the ways that we said yes is with Divine Ministries. This is a partnership that we have. A lady named Reverend Kelly, who is not a United Methodist pastor, came to us and said, I have this vision that God has given me, that I want to start a clothing closet for the winter months to help our homeless people who are in need of keeping warm. I need a place for this. And by the way, it needs to be free. Could you do that? And we looked around at the building and we said, yes, we could do that. And so for several years now, we've had this clothing closet in our basement that is run by Reverend Kelly and her volunteers. And they have a place where they can give clothing and sleeping bags and whatever people need. It's saying yes. There's power in saying yes. Because you never know what is going to happen when you say yes. You don't know that one yes is going to lead to something that you haven't even thought about. Yes is powerful. One yes was to the WAVE Project. Our WAVE Project is a nonprofit organization that offers mobile showers to the homeless. They work primarily in Macomb County, but you may have seen them around in other places. They come into our parking lot once a week on a Saturday. The only thing we give them is space and a water hookup. They come in with their volunteers and their shower unit and clean towels and clean clothes and underwear and all the things that they need. And sometimes they bring food. It just depends on what they have for the day. But that's a partnership that we have. And because we've had that relationship, because we said yes to that relationship, we have now a food pantry outside by the blessings box. Because they came to us and they said, we have this food pantry. Think small library box like you see out in communities. We have this food pantry and it's someplace else, but the people that are housing it right now don't want it there anymore. Could you house it? And we said yes. And so now we have this food pantry where you take what you need and leave what you can. And we had a person who saw this food pantry, not related to our church, not related to our congregation, but just a community member who came into the church and said, I noticed you have this food pantry. Is it okay if I leave food there? And we were like, yes, you can leave food there. And so we said yes. And so now we have personal hygiene products, feminine hygiene products, and food products that people can just come to our building and take. They don't have to ask questions. They just get what they need. We had a group that a partnership called GEMS. Now this is an interesting story and how our partnership began. Because it began with a person who's now a member of our congregation, but at the time he was living in a tent in our courtyard. Our courtyard became a little tent city during COVID. We had about 6 tents there. We had people living there. But he was living in the tent in our courtyard. And GEMS is a group that was started out of another church, another denomination. And they were feeding people in the main downtown parking lot across Gratiot from our congregation. And as you can imagine, they were attracting quite a few people who were coming to get a free meal once a month or twice a month or however often they were doing it. And the restaurants and the businesses were not enjoying that because it was bringing people who were getting free food when they could be coming to the restaurant to pay for food. So it was a little bit of a struggle. And the restaurants and the businesses decided they didn't want GEMS in their parking lot anymore, that they told them they needed to leave. And this individual who was getting food from GEMS said, you know what? you should go across the street and talk to Pastor Dan, because I bet Pastor Dan can help you out. So once a month, Jim's comes to our parking lot and they feed people. Last summer they had a barbecue and there were over 400 people who showed up to get food in our parking lot. It is partnerships, it is relationships, it is saying yes. As Carl said, I have one foot in the world in education. I went into the high school and met with the principal several years ago, 6 years ago now. And I said, what keeps you up at night about your students and your school? And as he spoke, I wrote. And that meeting led to a meeting with the social worker of the school. And I said, what keeps you up at night about your students and your schools? And she spoke, and I wrote. And I made lists, and I listened. And then afterwards, I took that list back to the church and to the pastor at the time, and I said, can we do something about this? And that pastor said, yes, we need to do something about this. So 6 years later, we supply school supplies. I know if there's at least one kindergarten teacher in the audience here who we supply school supplies. And we gather those school supplies in July, and we hold on to them, we hoard them, and we continue gathering them until December. And the Sunday after Christmas, we gather them all on the chancel, we say a blessing over them, and I load them in my car. This is my car, and it is every floorboard, every car seat, the back of the car, usually to the ceiling, of school supplies and clothing and things for the school, because we know that teachers are running out at mid-year and they need these things at mid-year. They get a lot of stuff in the beginning, but by January things are starting, the coffers are getting thin. So we take school supplies. We appreciate our teachers. This year we're doing a grab-and-go snack gifts for the teachers for Parent-Teacher Conference on March the 7th. Those are long 12-hour days. These are little things. We're not in the school every day. We're not there every week, but they are little things that we can do to help alleviate the needs of the students and to just support our teachers a little bit more. A new thing that we're doing with the schools, we've partnered with the Mount Clemens Library, and we're going to supply readers, guest readers for March, which is Reading Month. Simple. The school supplies the books. Our retired teachers and grandmas and grandpas get to go and read a story to children. It's a partnership that helps the children of the school understand that people love them and that they have someone who cares for them outside of their teachers and their families. One of the really cool ways that we said yes was when they called us, the high school. They said, we have a leak in our roof. We can't hold graduation. Would you be able to have graduation for us? And we held graduation in 2019. The class of 2019 graduated at our sanctuary. These are ways that we can be in partnership and build relationships with groups in our communities to show God's love in the world. One of the most amazing ways that we said yes, Pastor Dan said yes to something very simple, a wedding. How many of us have people who come to our church and say, I love your building, can I get married here? And we say, well, yes, there's a fee, but yes, you can get married here. Well, this couple came and said, we'd love to be married here. Pastor Dan said yes. And they said, oh, by the way, we have a guest pastor. Would that be possible? And Pastor Dan thought about this for a moment, and then he said yes. And on the day of the wedding, there was a groomsman who approached Pastor Dan, and he said, you know, you all have this fabulous building. Do you ever feed the homeless here? Pastor Dan said, why, yes, we do. So he said, at the end of the day, he said, I'm going to speak to a friend of mine, and we're going to be getting in contact with you. The groomsman's name was Chef Chris. The friend was a man named Chef Sean, and together they formed with other chefs from Detroit a group called Gift of Gourmet. Gift of Gourmet is a group that goes into homeless shelters, and they cook a 4-course gourmet meal for all of the people in the homeless shelter. But the partnership is they have the homeless shelter then agree to bring in resources so that they can have the homeless can have resources there at the homeless shelter where they don't have to go and get them, and they can have them right there. And so they called us and they said, could we do this? We've never done this at a church before. Could we branch out? And we said, yes. So we had a lady who came in, a couple of ladies who came in and cut hair. They were a hairstylist, and they came in and cut hair for free. We had a community advocacy group that came in to resource our homeless guests with other places. That was the first time we've ever done that. We have no idea what those connections will be when we say yes. We hope that we can do this again so that we can expand it, so that we can have more people in our church and in our building getting what they need and understanding God loves them. When we say yes, we don't know what's going to happen, but good things will. Now, what binds us all together in all of these groups that I've talked about, because many of them are not part of the United Methodist, world, what binds us together is a common mission. And it's a common mission to feed and clothe and to assist the homeless population in our community. We say yes, and when we do, we recognize that we are not always going to agree on all things. But as long as we can agree that no one is turned away, that everyone who comes to our parking lot or to our building will be served, will be respected, will be treated as the brothers and sisters in Christ that they are, then we can continue to work together. That's what binds us together. That's the power of saying yes. That's how we build relationships in our community. I talked about how we need to build trust and how that is so important in relationships. One of the ways that we've been building trust is by participating in Macomb Pride. Several years ago, we thought we want to be a part of this Macomb Pride event, which is the event that happens in Mount Clemens because we happen to be the county seat of Macomb County, and so Macomb Pride happens in our downtown area. The first year we were there, we just went, we helped set up tents, we assisted in whatever way we could. The second year, our leadership team said, we need to be a sponsor of this organization and this group. And so that was a financial ask and a give that we were able to make. And we went and we had our tent, and it was in October, and we were new at this kind of thing. It was windy and cold. We didn't have anything to hold our tent down with, and we were holding the stakes of the tent, and our businesses next to us took pity on us and brought us buckets of water to try to hold down our tent. Excuse me. But we did that, and the next year, and last year we did it again, and we were a sponsor of Macomb Pride. And here's the interesting thing. We're right on Main Street. People come up to us, members of the LGBTQIA+ community, they come to us and they say, you're a church. What on earth are you doing here? And we say, we're here to share God's love with you. God loves you. God wants you to know that, and we love you too. And here's an inspiring thing that Pastor Dan did. I'm in awe of this, and every year we've done it. He puts a box on the table with some 3x5 cards and Sharpie pens and a sign that says, leave a word for the church. Positive or negative, good or bad, let us know your experience with the church. And then he gathers those cards and he reads them on Sunday morning as part of our prayer time. And they are hard to hear because they are people's real experiences and feelings about the harm that has happened. We have absolutely no idea what those relationships are going to come from this foray into the community. But we know that we are building those relationships. We know that we are building trust. We know this because we had a gala last year to retire our mortgage, which we just did. We are very excited. But when we went into the community to go to see if we could get some donations from some of the businesses in our community, Pastor Dan and I walked around and went into businesses and said hello. And most often we got, we know you. You were at Macomb Pride. Like, yes, we were. You're the church that's over there on the corner. Yes, we are. Here's a piece of jewelry or a gift card that you can have for your silent auction. we're building relationships with the community, and we're also letting people know that God loves them in a very small and real way. Relationships change over time. We in the church are all too familiar with that. Pastors, elders, I like to say elders come and go, but deacons, we're forever. Elders come and go. We are used to change in our relationships. We are used to that. But they also change in our relationships in the community. Leaders come and go. Organizations decide that they are going to go in a different direction, or they move, or they cease to exist. I've gone through 5 principals at Seminole Academy in my time of working with the school. We've gone through 3 superintendents in my time of working with the schools. Every time I have to go into a principal's office and say, this is who I am, this is what I do, and what keeps you up at night about your students and your school. And we begin again with that relationship. We had a relationship with the Macomb Warming Center, which was a traveling warming center throughout Macomb County. We were a host for that warming center for 1 or 2 weeks every January, usually the coldest week of the year. We would house up to 100 guests in our church every week, from Sunday to Sunday, feed over 3,000 meals, dinners and breakfasts. It was a wonderful mission for our homeless people. We partnered with the Macomb Warming Center because they did not turn anyone away. If you came into our building and you were drunk or high, we didn't care. You came into our building to get warm, have a meal, and sleep. That was the Macomb Warming Center. 3 years ago, when COVID hit, the warming center had to go a different direction, and we began to supply food for them in their hotels where they were housing their guests. And this year they were permanently in a location in Warren, and we were unable to work with them. Relationships change. But we have 100 FEMA cots folded up underneath the stage in our fellowship hall downstairs. We have a dream and a hope and a prayer that something else is going to come along, that we will then be able to unfold those FEMA cots and allow people to come in and sleep in our building once more to stay warm from the Michigan cold. And we hope that that will happen. But relationships will change. And sometimes we have to sunset missions and ministries. And that's okay. Because when we do that, a dream can come. Something else can come out of that can be another mission and another ministry and another way to say yes. Relationships are the key to living out our mission in the world, which brings me back to the dollar bill. We have a ministry that we have been a part of for a couple of decades now called Community Meals. Community Meals is a partnership between us and another church in our community. We host 6 months, they host 6 months. Each of us has a community meal organizer, and each week we have different groups who come in to cook a meal. You can come to our building from 12:30 to 2 o'clock and be fed, no questions asked. We've even had a guest who had a wonderful 4-legged friend who would come and sit under the table, and we would make sure that he had extra meat so that he could feed his 4-legged friend as well. One day, a guest who had been a guest for us for a long time came to our community meals organizer and said, I want to say thank you. I want to give you something that I can say thank you with. And our community meals organizer at first said, I'm not real sure that, no, thank you, you don't have to do that. We appreciate you being here. And then he insisted, our guest insisted and said, I need to give this to you to say thank you. It is the relationship in the dollar that makes it valuable, friends. This dollar has never been deposited. It won't be deposited because it signifies for us who we are as called people of God. It signifies to us the relationships that we build not only with our community, but with the dear ones who come into our sphere. It signifies to us the responsibility that we have as called people of God to share the love of God no matter where, with no matter who, all the time. The value of $1 is more than 100 pennies. Thank you. Are we going to take questions? Are we going to take questions?
Reverend Lisa, are you good for some Q&A? Sure. Okay, great. I'd invite you to raise your hand. I'll bring you the mic just so that all of our tech guys are happy upstairs, okay?
It's always good to keep the tech guys happy.
That's right. What questions do you have for Reverend Lisa?
Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Elizabeth.
I guess my question is, it sounds like Mount Clemens really has a strong mission and vision of feeding and clothing and caring for those who are experiencing homelessness. Mm-hmm. Do you know any of the history of the church that got the congregation on board with that mission and vision? Because I think that any mission that we do, again, like you said, your congregation has to be on board with it. Yeah. So what's the history of getting your congregation on board with being cool with a tent city, being cool with allowing homeless people in the building, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question, and that precedes me, or that predates me. Our congregation celebrated its 200th year several years ago, and they have been in mission in the community for longer than I have been around. And I'm not that long in the tooth, but I'm getting there. So, but they've been around for a long time doing mission and ministry. I have heard stories that they were actually a place where people gathered to board buses to head down south to register voters during the civil rights era. So this church has had a culture of being in missions for a very long time. We have had bread ministry where we would pick up bread from Panera and redistribute it the next day. That ministry was sunsetted. Our quilters have a ministry of making fidget quilts for autistic children and for other things. We have just, it's an endemic part of our culture in our church. And I can't honestly tell you where it comes from. I just know that it's been there for a very long time.
Other questions?
Hi, Rodney.
Hi. Okay, your relationship with all the other churches or the groups that come in.
Yes.
So we have found we used to have that a lot, mm-hmm. and now we have discovered that when we host the events, our hospitality week or the housing of the homeless and mm-hmm. so forth, these different things, that we no longer have all the group participation since COVID. That yes. we had prior, and we've not seemingly getting these other churches and groups back in the way that they used to come in. Any recommendations? What have you guys, did that just maintain, or did you guys have to do something more to get some of these groups back? I understand it was slow to come back, but yes. So a lot of them have just, those relationships have changed. They've moved on to something else, whatever, and it's just even trying to reinvent it. We're just finding it extremely difficult yes. to keep those things going when we don't have that participation from others in the community.
Yes, in fact, we've had that happen with community meals. During community meals, we did continue to serve during COVID. We had to morph it to being outside and it being only takeaway food, so that we had to package stuff. And we have lost one of our partners, and we've had to gain another partner. One of the churches we were working with has no longer said they could no longer do community meals, and so we have another partner in the community who was already doing a meal, and they already have a food pantry that we have been in partner with. We give food to their food pantry, but we talked with them, and we had to remake another relationship. Rodney, the only thing I can tell you is that it's perseverance. It's continuing to cast your vision out into the community. It's continuing to try to meet with the leaders of those organizations to see how we can start this again. It's just persistence, and that's how we've had to make phone calls, we've had to have meetings, we've had to move out into the community. We just changed principals again at the elementary school, and I had to go back into the elementary school and recast our vision for what that means. It's persistence, time and patience and persistence. So.
We have a question from one of our online friends.
Okay.
So Kirsten's going to read that for you.
Hi. Jonathan wants to know, how can we join in this wonderful ministry?
Ooh, Jonathan wants to know how we can join in this wonderful ministry. Jonathan, our church is open on Monday from 9 to 2, and Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday also from 9 to 2. You can call our church office. We will be glad to talk with you in any way. As I said, we do have these boxes outside of our church. Anyone can leave personal hygiene products. Anyone can leave food there if that's a possibility. We'd like to know more about what you'd like to know and what you'd like to be a part of. So you could give us a call. I guess I can give the church number is 586-468-6464. You could give us a call anytime Monday through Thursday, 9 to 2, and our administration assistant, Wendy, will be glad to talk to you.
All right, and one more.
I really do appreciate your insights. I'm the lay minister who chairs the outreach ministry at Ferndale First United. I guess I want to piggyback on this gentleman's comments a little bit. I think the hardest thing for us since COVID has been discerning how we do what we do next. Mm-hmm. Like trying to understand what is it that people are looking for, what's the needs of the community. And you may have already mentioned it. You just said that you essentially cast your vision out to the community to let them know what your vision is. But I was wondering, my question is one of discernment. How do you discern so you're not spending a lot of energy and time trying to develop something that's, it's your vision, but it's not their vision,
Sure.
the partnership part of it. Thanks.
Sure. And again, I would say that that's a really good, it's really good to know what your congregation, what your community is capable of. I can't promise that, I can't start with the school a mission that says I'm going to have somebody in your building every day, every week to be here to volunteer to read with your children. I can't do that. I simply don't have those volunteers. But what I can do is say, let's see what we have and how can we make what we have work for you. And so a lot of times it's just knowing who your people are and what is it that you can do. And this congregation has a real love and passion for the people in our community who are homeless and doing what we can. And so when we have something that comes up, like bus tickets, for instance, this is relatively new, and we weren't even sure that we could make this happen past the first time that we purchased them, because bus tickets are expensive, and we give 2 bus tickets to each person. And so we were able to purchase a packet of bus tickets. And once our congregation began to see how wonderful that ministry was, now we can have bus tickets fairly regularly. There are days that we don't. And when we don't, we have a sign on the door that says, we have no bus tickets this week, because we do what we can. So I think it goes back to assessing what your community, what your church is able to do, and how you are going to be able to move forward with that. And it may be you have to go back to square one and start really tiny and really small in making something work that is successful. Because let's face it, when our congregations feel good about what they've done, they're willing to do more. And so going back and finding out what that is will be the important step that you'll need to take.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank
Good work that we've been hearing about. Deserves some good rest. Directly after our district superintendent asks one more question.
Yes, that's okay.
Thank you for that. I wanted to be patient with that. I don't think it's scriptural, at least I didn't see it in the scriptures. There's this one scene in the Ten Commandments, when the movie Ten Commandments, when Joshua tells Moses to get up on the rock so that the people can see you and be encouraged. I say that because the leadership, clergy leadership in the local church in this kind of work, why is it important for the leadership, particularly the clergy, yourself and Dan in your situation, why is that important for you to be out front and visible for the people to see?
Oh, that's a good question. Both elders and deacons share a ministry of servanthood. When we are ordained to service. Service to the church, service to God, service to our world. If we hide ourselves away writing sermons every single day, we hide ourselves away doing only what it is that we need to do in our church to make sure that our members are cared for, then we are not living into fully what it means to be a servant minister of God. I think that it is important for us, even though elders have much more responsibility with what's happening in the building, it's also important for all of us as clergy to be 1 foot in the world and 1 foot in the community or in the church. I think that it's if people see us as leaders of our church and we are out there in the community, then other people in other churches and other organizations will go, that's somebody that we need to get to know because they are moving and shaking in their community and in their church as well. But I think it's important that we live into that promise that we make at ordination, that we are servant ministers to God, to our people, and to the community as well. So.
Friends, will you thank Reverend Alicea one more time?
Thank you.
Thank you.